Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hazy Sports Podcast. We're back for another week, Charlie. Good to see you. How you enjoying this polar vortex weather rolling in?
Yeah, it's a little crazy. It's like living in the friggin' Arctic out there. Had to go out this really early this morning at about 4:30 and was actually physically hurting my face to walk outside. So it's nice to be back indoors and talking to you.
Well, we got lots of good sports action to catch up on from last week. Of course, this is our conference championship weekend in the NFL. We got a little Seahawks-Rams action tomorrow, and we got the Patriots and Broncos on the AFC side. Any big plans to settle in and enjoy those games tomorrow?
I'm actually going to be out watching my son play hockey, and then we're off to see OHL games. So I'm probably going to miss both. Which once the Bills are out, I still am interested, but I definitely won't be as glued to the TV as normal. That's for sure.
Well, there was some interesting developments on the NFL side. Speaking of your Bills, your head coach, Sean McDermott, got fired. What are your thoughts on that development?
I don't know. Like I get it. It's 9 years, right? You clearly are not getting over the hump. I like the guy as a coach, and I get the outrage of firing him, and I don't really think it's more that they wanted him to stay. It's that how does the GM stick around? Who's had, one of the worst drafting records as far as producing stars. And so if he's, giving the coach the players that he's got to play with, it's kind of, they both maybe should have been gone. I don't know. I like McDermott, but if you're a defensive coach, you can't have a defense that's allowing 30 points a game, right? Like it's, I think he was a great fit for the city, but I do think it was the time to move on.
Yeah, I think so too. Sometimes you get enough runs at it doesn't happen. It's just kind of you got to shake something up. But yeah, you mentioned the GM. That was kind of a funny press conference. One of the reporters was asking about Keon Coleman, who's all of a sudden gets run over by a bus, courtesy of the owner who's stepped in. That was kind of a weird exchange.
Especially like you're coming off, I'm sure you saw the Ravens owner where he was just like, this was my decision. It was coming if they lost a week later. And he was like completely, had the decision made up, whereas this guy's now decided to, take shots at a player who's still on your roster and was actually, decent in that Broncos game. If I'm Keon Coleman, I'm just like, what do I got to do here? Like, I thought that was unbelievably unprofessional.
Yeah, it just seemed odd to, for him to kind of get called out like that out of the blue. I was going to ask you, I don't, to watch the Bills games as close as you, but I thought he was a pretty decent young receiver coming up. Maybe hasn't reached his full potential yet, but you can't
Well,
think he's going to feel great after that exchange.
and towards the end of the season, he missed a couple team things and was getting benched but it was just a weird, just don't say anything, right? Like it's just, and if your coaching staff has that much pull over who gets drafted, then what do you need a GM for at that point? But I don't know, McDermott 98 and 50. You can't argue with the results as far as the regular season. 5 division titles in a row, but the 8-8, 8-8 in playoffs, and just some of the most memorable losses for a team that has, a history of memorable playoff losses. So I think it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, but it was probably time to move on.
All right, let's get back down to a little hockey talk here. We had an excellent game Wednesday night representing for the Wings, a big win over the Leafs. And I know I talked a lot about the Red Wings last week, so I don't want to make this Red Wings radio, but I did think that game was worth mentioning just because it was an exciting game. Great play from both teams, great chances at both ends. Red Wings get the win in a overtime thriller.
Yeah, it was great. It was back and forth, lot of fast play. I thought the Red Wings kind of handled them a little bit. Like Leafs definitely got outplayed, but Gibson was good when he had to be. There was a few plays in that game, I'm sure you remember, but Larkin made like this amazing backhand pass tape to tape to Raymond. Like it was like a saucer pass. And then Raymond got absolutely stood up by, I think it was Benoit. And then they wanted to fight, of course, because there's been a big hit, but nobody actually did fight. But I thought that was pretty awesome play. And then Sider just manhandling Cowan and in overtime. Like if you're Easton Cowan, you just got to ice that puck or something. Like you're giving up probably 6 inches and probably 50 pounds. It wasn't going to go your way there, but that was an awesome game for a Wednesday night.
Yeah, I was happy to see because, you know, I think Red Wings fans have been talking about Cider. Oh, not just Red Wings fans. Like Cider's been getting his flowers, but you know, that was just a good one where he played one of his better games of the year on with kind of on a bigger stage with a nationally televised game, and he had that, of course, that big play in overtime. But that play where he kind of shut Matthews off on his scoring chance, and he just played, you know, I think he had 28, 29 minutes of ice time. It felt like Edmondson and Sider were on the ice for the whole game. Those guys are logging some big minutes, but yeah, I think just when you mentioned, you know, we talked about being a few pieces away, I think that's where we needed is a little depth on the defensive end. We can't put so much on Edmondson and Sider, and that's why when they played the Wild later that week, watching the way Quinn Hughes skates and zips the puck around, and just knowing that there was a lot of buzz around him potentially coming to Detroit, to just it's hard to watch that game and not feel like we missed the boat a little bit on that one.
Yeah, he would have been the perfect addition there, because I think that's what they need. They need a real puck mover. But it was also funny that we had just been kind of, well, you had shit talking Scott Lawton, and then he gets the goal. And probably the weakest penalty shot call I've ever seen in my life. And he looked like Tom Barrasso on that penalty shot. It's so funny how many times we've mentioned a player and then something happens literally within the next day or two.
Well, that's a perfect segue to the next thing I was going to bring up with Josh Doan. I think Jarmo Kekalainen, he must be a big Hazy listener, because last week you were really pumping Josh Doan's tires, and literally I think 2 days after we finished recording, he gets a 7-year deal for about $7 million a year. Seems like a win-win for the Sabres and Josh Doan, getting him locked up for that term.
If that dude keeps progressing like he's already got more points than Peterka, who he was traded for, but he's also a guy who's just going to get it done defensively. Like this could end up being an absolute steal at that price.
Absolutely, yeah. The intangibles he brings. You hear the Chicklets guys that played for Arizona talk about Shane Doan with such reverence, and it seems like Josh has got a lot of those like leadership qualities that his dad had. So yeah, I think that's going to be a huge foundational piece for the Sabres moving forward. So happy for Josh there. One other thing hockey related I wanted to circle back with you on here is the banners in when we were talking about my Montreal trip. I think you made a comment that they must have more retired jerseys than any other team in the league. And I think I threw out, 20 to 25 that I thought I saw there, just because there were so many, and you actually piqued my interest. So I looked into it a little bit more. You're indeed right. The Canadians have the most retired jerseys out of any NHL team, with 18. They don't have that 18 different numbers retired. They've got some names up there that were before they actually started retiring the numbers, multiple guys with the same number, but
Right.
they rank third, at least from the North American sports that I looked into, in terms of total jerseys retired. You had mentioned the Celtics last week. They're second with 19, and the Yankees top the list with 21, which kind of makes sense given the lengthy history of that franchise and the number of dynasties that have run through that organization. That was just a fun little tidbit to look up. I was kind of curious after you mentioned that.
Yeah, I did some digging too, and I was surprised that Edmonton actually only has eight jerseys retired. But you could probably name the 8 players that they do have retired, but I thought they'd have a couple more than that. But then I guess you get into those teams, they have their own fucking ring of honor or whatever, where other stuff goes on, I guess. But
Yeah.
I can't
Now,
imagine Montreal's ever going to get beat in that one.
no, even the Leafs, I think they were at like 13 or 14. It would have to be an original six team to kind of have the history to do that. Now, with the eighth with the Oilers, I got to imagine almost all eight of those guys played on the same team at one point, or
Yeah,
six.
all except one. I've
Smith?
got he's I don't know if he's in there or not. It's your Gretzky, Curry, Anderson, Fuhrer, Messier. I'd have to look it up,
Low?
but yeah, he's in there. And then there's Al Hamilton.
Okay.
Yeah, there was one weird one that I had to actually look up. That's a little before my day, but I'm sure Al was tearing it up back then. So
Well, yeah, that's a kind of a fun one to look back on. We've got lots of hockey to talk about in our weekly hazing coming up here. We've got our trivia coming up. We've got our new segment, our Wax Era Legend, where we're going to be profiling Maple Leaf great Wendel Clark. So that's coming up soon. We've also got another trivia question here for you. So we've got a pretty stacked episode to get through today. Before we jump into that, though, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the national championship game, another big sporting event that happened since we last talked.
yeah, it was a pretty awesome game actually. Like the playoffs as a whole were kind of disappointing. There was a lot of beat downs and if you would have told me 10 years ago that Indiana football would have one of the greatest, single seasons onto a national championship, I don't think anyone would have taken you seriously, but just an unbelievably dominant season, and what a way to end that game with that crazy run where he gets absolutely stood up and just keeps going and pushing through. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the better championship games anyways that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, it was a great finish, exciting finish, and Mendoza looks like he'll be able to be the real deal at the NFL level. I guess probably no debate whether he's the number one pick going into the next draft.
No, they said that like half of the Raiders coaching staff was there watching that game. And I can't imagine you leave that game with any question that's who you want to take.
Yeah, and that I think that that run you talked about quickly cements itself as one of the all-time great moments.
Classic.
Like if you just take that picture of him sort of diving into the end zone, right up there with some of the greatest college football moments of all time. And nice to see the U back
Yeah.
back there. You kind of remember the glory days from the Jimmy Johnson era, and then and kind of even like the Clinton Portis, Frank Gore. They had that kind of run there when we were younger where they were a pretty dominant force. So kind of cool to see them back again, along with kind of a non-traditional football powerhouse in Indiana making it happen.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Carson Beck has a 9th year of eligibility. Maybe he can get them back to the national championship again.
Yeah, well, it'll be. It was a great way to finish things off on the college football season. Now we've got big run to the Super Bowl for the NFL, and then she'll be pretty much hockey all the way in for us, anyways, through the Olympics and the final playoff push.
Yes, sir. I can't wait for the Olympics.
Well, let's jump into weekly trivia. I think I got a good one here for you.
All right.
Yeah, and it kind of what prompted me on this one was earlier this week. I don't know if you saw the game. Oliver Moore, the young guy for the Blackhawks, there was celebrating his 21st birthday and got himself a Gordie Howe hat trick. So of course that's a assist.
Does
and
that,
then
does that count as a fight though? Because he just got dummied in that fight.
Yeah, I'm taking a bit of a generous definition of the Gordie Howe hat trick there, because also the goal that he got was in a shootout, so you could kind of debate whether that truly counts. But he got it. Yeah, he got the shootout goal to win it. He got technically a fight. He got his, he got dummied, which you could tell he didn't really, even when he was dropping the gloves, you could almost see his brain saying, this is not a good idea before the fight even really got started, and he just like ate three punches and was down. So you got to appreciate the effort and sticking up for Nick Lardis. Nice to see Nick Lardis with the Blackhawks after tearing up the OHL for the Bulldogs there last year. Anyways, that brings me to my trivia question: is which player in NHL history had the most Gordie Howe hat tricks?
Oh,
Now, ironically, Gordie himself only had 2, and the record is 18, which I thought was pretty
18.
impressive. Having 18 fights on your record, where you also scored a goal and got an assist in those games. Now,
Yeah, no kidding.
I can
18. Wow.
yeah, there's a guy with 17 as well. So both of them fairly well-known commodities. So you should have a chance at it. I can give you a hint later on, but you may
Sure.
not need it. So I don't want to make it too easy for you, but we'll circle back. I got to stop saying circle back, but we'll circle back we'll revisit this in the outro, give you and the listeners a little time to think about it. I think this is a good time. Let's jump into our weekly hazing.
Wave it off. Fuck, let's go. Fucking wear that stick at me again, you're gonna fucking eat it. Bare fucking teeth. You wanna get knocked out again? We got a guy for you.
Okay, first up for the weekly hazing, we want to talk about Marner, his return to Toronto. The Leafs played Vegas in Vegas not too long ago. Vegas got the win, but of course there was a lot of anticipation about Marner's return to Toronto, what his reception would be like, and it kind of had a bit of a playoff type of feel to it in terms of the build up to this game. But unfortunately, like from my perspective, the game was a bit of a letdown. I don't know how you felt about it.
Well, for me, it was your typical big time moment Marner game, right? Like you barely noticed the guy. If they didn't boo when he touched the puck, I wouldn't have even noticed he was out there. Like he did absolutely nothing in the game as far as offensively. It was the other big names on the team that were driving like Vegas. Like Mark Stone was a machine
Oh,
last night.
man.
Jack Eichel, I don't know if it's possible to be underrated when you're one of the top, 20 players in the game, but I don't think he gets enough kudos for how good he actually is. Like he makes things look effortless. Like he's such a good skater, and when you got guys like Stone and that doing the dirty work, he can kind of move around a little bit. But I don't know, Marner almost seems like a luxury on that team. Like I don't know that I guess he drives that second line a little bit, but I don't even know that they need him.
Vegas has a lot of depth there. I mean, he is, nice to sort of quarterback that power play up at the point, but you're right. He doesn't stand out like Eichel and Stone. And I was thinking the same thing watching Stone. I don't know if there was really much debate whether he should have been on the Olympic team or not. He's not quite as, I guess, flashy as some of the other guys Canada has, but I'm excited to see him play with McDavid and MacKinnon and those guys for Team Canada.
That's the thing. Like Hyman plays that role with Edmonton, and I obviously think Mark Stone is a better version. So if he's going to be on a line with McDavid, that's going to be fun to watch. But the only other thing with Marner, like I guess I really don't understand. Like they boo the hell out of him all game, but then they show the video, and now all of a sudden everyone's glad to see him. I thought that was a little weird. Like especially the night before, Stuart Skinner had the same treatment in Edmonton. He wasn't in the game. And I know it's a little different with a goalie because they're not handling the puck, but it was all kind of loved. Like, I don't know, the Leaf fan base makes no sense, sense to me. Like you wanted this guy out of here and now you're mad that he went somewhere else. It was kind of odd.
It would have been more exciting if he had a big game and,
Sure.
came up huge. But like you said, he felt kind of invisible, almost like he just wanted to get that whole experience out of the way.
And
Yeah.
and this whole night buried the lead. What the fuck happened to Craig Berube? He looked like he got in a fight with an MMA fighter who had a machete. He had
That looked vicious.
giant gash across his forehead, and the one side of his face was all like, if anyone's glad Marner was back, it's probably him, because he
Well,
probably didn't have to answer 100 questions about his face.
yeah, that's So true. I heard him after the game saying it, addressing it as some sort of weight room accident. And I was trying
Is
to
he
think of
throwing the weights?
I was trying to think of what exercise you could be doing that could potentially result in a massive laceration in 3 different directions across the top of your skull.
That was unreal. And it's funny because I'm complaining that it's a little cold and windy and I didn't want to go to work. This dude's got like 80 stitches in his forehead. Oh man, that was unbelievable. I mean, yeah, was he juggling dumbbells? I don't know what the hell's going on. But yeah, I mean, I guess we can put that Marner stuff to bed now. Like, are they gonna keep booing him that every time he comes? I guess he's only coming once a year, but I don't know. And then just to another point on the game, like Morgan Riley, I don't know if you remember the Dorofeyev goal where he's just watching them hold the puck, like get your stick in there. They're so done as a team. And I know I picked them to win the East because I didn't think they would be this bad. But my prediction for this team is they're going to severely overpay for Dougie Hamilton and still miss the playoffs this year.
You just never got really a feeling like it was in doubt for Vegas. And
no,
they're like laughing on the bench. When they scored right off, the whole time they were almost trolling the Leafs. And it seems like they could have just like cranked it up whenever they wanted to. But I just came away from that game feeling like those two teams are in completely different. Not even close.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree.
All right, well, let's switch gears here. Looking at the points leaders for the NHL right now, we've got a real barn burner of an Art Ross race going on. We've got McKinnon's at 87, McDavid's at 85. This one looks like it's going to come down to the wire. And it's pretty cool to have two guys that are clearly the two best players of this generation in their absolute prime right now, going toe to toe. And it begs the question, Charlie, is this the best Art Ross race that we've ever seen?
I would say it is, and only because I mean, we're used to the 80s and 90s where there was always one sort of dominant guy that was so far ahead. So I actually went back and looked. So other than the year that Gretzky tied Marcel Dion, he won when he won the sixth Art Ross in a row, he won by an average of 30 to 70 points. Like it wasn't even close. So to have these two guys 2 points apart, and like you said, in their absolute prime and just dominating. But I will throw out a dark horse. Like Kucherov's only 8 points back too. And he's another guy who just seems to put up 2 or 3 every game. It's basically, I think McKinnon's probably got the edge because McDavid has actually played 4 more games than him already. And McKinnon just looks like a man friggin' possessed this year. Like he's out to prove something this year. And I don't know. It's pretty cool to see. And I don't see these guys slowing down. But I don't know. I can't really remember a race like this. Maybe for goal scoring, back when the Brett Hull, Solani days, they were pretty dominant. But
yeah, I don't think there was in our era, of like when we were kind of growing up that was on par with this. I agree with you. I think this could go down as the best one just in terms of having like those two players at their peak being as close as they are. And you have the added element of them playing together on the Olympics this year. When you look back in this year in history, will be, kind of cool to see these two guys in their prime battling it out for the Art Ross, playing together on the Olympic team, and potentially, battling it out for the Western Conference spot into the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
Which would be awesome too. But just to do our due diligence, I did kind of, look back into some previous years and had a couple honorable mentions I wanted to point out, and some that are just kind of more interesting. But 1970-71, Phil Esposito won the scoring title with 152 points, and Bobby Orr finished second with 139 points. So 2 guys on the same team battling it out. For both of them, that was their best career year, but both kind of shocked me. Like 139 points for a defenseman in that era was like insane. And
yeah,
I actually kind of forgot that Phil Esposito had these high point totals, like 152 in the early 70s.
It's
He probably beat the existing record by 30 or 40 points at that time. So that was a good one. And then you mentioned the Gretzky Dion. They both had 137 points. That was Wayne's rookie year. They ended up giving it to Dion because he had more goals. So we haven't had a tie since then. But the one I was most interested in, and that I thought compares obviously to the caliber of players with MacKinnon and McDavid, is Wayne and Mario. And because their careers were staggered a little bit, we didn't have a super long period where they were both kind of going toe-to-toe in their prime. But just for interest's sake, I'm going to go to my notes for this one. The evolution of those two going head-to-head from a points perspective. So Mario's rookie year was 84-85. And that year, Gretzky got 208. Mario had 100 in his rookie year. That Wayne obviously clearly dominant. And then 85-86, Wayne comes in with his career high of 215. His third straight 200-plus point season. No big deal. Mario had a nice sophomore campaign with 141 points. 86-87, Gretzky's dips a little below 200 with 183 versus 107 for Mario, but Mario only played 63 games that year, so probably would have made it a little closer. Then you got 87-88. Mario gets his first Art Ross. He gets 168 points. Wayne has 149, but in that year, Wayne only played 64 games. So I think this leads us to what I think was the best battle for them was 88-89. This is the first year Wayne's playing in LA. They're both played full seasons, and in that year, that's Mario's biggest year. He hits 199 points. Wayne gets 168. Mario gets another Art Ross. And to think there was a time where 168 points didn't get the job done for an Art Ross trophy is kind of crazy. After that, Mario battled a bunch of injuries, and by the time he got healthy again, Gretzky was kind of on the downside of his career, so they never kind of had that moment again. But anyways, a little bit of a deeper dive on the Art Ross, but I'm definitely looking forward to the race this year with McDavid and MacKinnon and seeing how that finishes up. Okay, last question for our weekly hazing is, and this is coming off a 3-goal performance from Gavin McKenna last night. And yeah, he's heating up pretty good. So he is the consensus number 1 pick in the draft this year. And our question is, what's the best landing spot for him right now? Currently, the 5 teams in the bottom of the league are Vancouver, Calgary, St. Louis, Winnipeg, and the Rangers. What do you think? Where would you like to see him end up?
I'm going to say, and this hurts me as an Edmonton fan, but I'd like to see the Flames somehow land this first overall pick. Like, Vancouver's probably going to be the favorite because I think they're going to end up trading Pettersson and any other pieces. They've already moved out Sherwood. But that organization's just a fucking train wreck. To be honest, I'd like to see the Battle of Alberta get a little injection of talent. I'm sure the Flames are probably going to bottom out here too once we get closer to the deadline. But I just think that dynamic with McKenna in Calgary, McDavid in Edmonton would be an interesting sort of changing of the guard in Alberta. But what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of went 2 different ways. I thought it would be nice to see him on a Canadian team, and out of those Canadian teams, Calgary is the kind of one that I had thought too. For the same reason, it'd be great to see a little bit of a Battle of Alberta going again. I think Calgary's they haven't had a winner there for a while. So I think those fans deserve something to get them excited. But on the other hand, I always enjoy when the original 6 teams are good. And so I thought the Rangers would be a good landing spot for him from that perspective. Also, selfishly, I kind of would like to see him in an Eastern time zone team, just so you can see more of those games. And it'd be kind of fun to see him in a big market. So I think, yeah, I'd be happy with either of those 2 teams. Seeing him with the Rangers, I'd see him play a little bit more. He gets the big market on the big stage to see what he can do. But also, yeah, it'd be kind of nice to see him stay on a Canadian team and help rebuild Calgary and get that Battle of Alberta going again.
Like, the odds are it's probably going to be Vancouver, but I assume New York's gonna have a bit of a fire sale as well. What a train wreck. Like, you look at the names on that team and it's kind of crazy that they're this bad. But we were a year ago talking about how we'd rather have JT Miller, and that guy may have run himself out of being a captain. That's a sinking ship in New York, and the talent that they have, they should not be this bad. I don't get it. I thought maybe the coach, like, I think we both agreed getting a new voice in there was going to help, but they're a mess. So if he does end up there, I hope they get rid of some of these guys beforehand.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But I maybe I got a little ahead of myself here where I called him the consensus number one pick. I think for a while, for a long time, he was, by far the consensus number one pick. There's a few other guys, Stenberg from Sweden and even Keaton Verhoff are kind of in that running. Most mock drafts I've seen still have MacKinnon as the number one guy. Are you still confident that he should go number one?
Yeah, I think after the World Junior goes out, where the Canadian team went out, I think it was like well, is this guy really the guy? And I think you'd be stupid. Like, I can't imagine being the team that decides not to draft him. I think you'd take the chance, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you don't want to be the team that decides to get creative at the draft. This kid turns out to be the next superstar, so I think he's going first no matter what.
Yeah, I think so too. But Stenberg, I don't know if I mentioned this. I was actually working out with him about 2 or 3 months ago. Now, not directly, but at the Good Life I go to, I went in the one day and I saw all these kids with the Swedish gear on. And at the time, I thought that it was like some Swedish peewee team that just had really nice swag or whatever. And it turned out it was actually the Swedish World Junior team. They were in London for some exhibition games against Team Canada in preparation. So they were playing at Bud Gardens there. And it was funny because I think
Did you go up to him and say, "Hey, Stenberg, mind if I work in here?"
Yeah. How many sets you got left on this leg press? I'm ready to crush these quads here, buddy. Let's keep her moving. But no, I think I should have pulled a Craig Berube and slammed a barbell over his head. Oh my God. Anyways,
That's good stuff.
But no, it's funny, you see these kids play and they're in their equipment, but when you take them out of their equipment, I gotta get it together here, but you realize how young they are. They're like 17, 18 or whatever, but when you see them, yeah, they don't look like NHL prospects. All right.
Well, that's pretty neat though.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's get this back on the rails here.
Back on track.
Well, that wraps up the weekly hazing. Moving right along. Stuff. All right. So, Charlie, this is our first Wax Era Legend segment. Excited to kick it off.
Wendel stopped him.
You talked a little bit about it last week, but maybe we refresh the listeners in terms of what the purpose of this segment is.
Yeah, so we're looking back at guys whose careers, maybe not as hyped up as some of the players now, but I think were absolute beasts during their heyday, and we just want to bring them more to light. Today's subject is probably going to be the most well-known guy that we do, but we just figured this was the perfect place to start because he's easily got to be one of the most memorable players from the 80s and 90s. And I just think if this guy played today, he'd literally be able to just teams would be giving him a blank check, I think, which is, saying something, but he just played both ends of the ice and skilled and tough. And so without further ado, let's get into Wendel Clark, Wax
Yes.
era legend.
All right, let's do it. So we'll start with a little bit of his junior career here. Do you want to kind of break that down a little bit, and then we'll kind of get into his NHL?
Yeah, so he played for the Saskatoon Blades. He was a defenseman, which I found surprising because I didn't know that until we started doing the research on this. But played 2 years with Saskatoon of the Western Hockey League. Put up some crazy numbers as a defenseman, and I kind of wondered, and maybe this is kind of what they did. I know on my son's team, if you have a super skilled player and a great skater and that, you kind of put him on defense so he can play both ends of the ice. And I'm wondering if that's maybe what the plan was with Wendel, because to put up 68 points, 225 penalty minutes your first year, and then 87 points and 250 in your second year as a defenseman is pretty crazy. He was a member of the 1985 World Junior Gold Medal team. So I went back and looked up some of the other names on that team. He played with Shane Corson, Brian Bradley, Adam Creighton, and Claude Lemieux. They won the gold that year. In his second year in the Western Hockey League, he was first team All-Star and was won the award for the Western Hockey League's best defenseman. And then, of course, following that year, he entered the NHL draft, and he was taken first overall by your Toronto Maple Leafs. I went down the list of draft picks. So the next player that you would even think about taking ahead of him maybe was until pick 27 of round 2, and it was Joe Nieuwendyk. Like I went down the whole first round, and there wasn't one guy, where you thought maybe they missed here, or maybe this was a pick they should have made.
Yeah.
Other notables. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, it wasn't a super deep draft. I think Craig Simpson was the second pick. Maybe you were just about to go there.
Yeah, he was number 2. But then some other notables in the draft. Keith Gretzky went in the third round, which I thought was kind of interesting.
From the Belleville Bulls, I think.
All the way down to the 11th round, Vancouver selected Igor Larionov, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I'm sure it was a case of he's probably never coming over here, but we'll just throw this pick out. But known as a physical force as well as a crazy offensive touch, almost 500 penalty minutes in just 2 seasons of junior. I mean, it pretty much sums up what he ended up becoming with the Leafs. But the whole thing of drafting a defenseman and then converting him to a forward, like, could you imagine a team doing that now? The amount of scrutiny they would be under. Whereas you draft this absolute machine of a defenseman and you're like, no, we're going to convert this guy into a forward. So the fact the Leafs even did that is kind of a tip of the cap. Like, they saw something here and they thought, let's develop this side of this guy. So pretty versatile guy.
The only other junior thing that I wanted to mention is his time with the Notre Dame Hounds, which was a junior B team. But what made that kind of notable is he played with Russ Courtnall and Gary Lehman. The three of them were the same age, who ended up being a line for the Leafs later on in his career, kind of the famous Hound lines. Pretty prolific junior career, and obviously for good reason. The Leafs took him first overall, 85. Kicking off his rookie year, he had 35 goals, 227 penalty minutes, which pretty much instantly made him a fan favorite. And I think those stats pretty much kind of represented what he would go on to do in his career. He finished second in Calder voting that year to Gary Suter, who must have had a pretty good year to top that. And then in 89, he was named captain. He was 22 years old. He became the Leafs captain, Captain Crunch. He made him the youngest captain in Leafs history. So, yeah, that kind of sets the table for Wendel. And now, Charlie, just as you were kind of like going back, watching footage of him, listening to interviews and just doing your research on this, what were the things that stood out to you in terms of his style of play?
So he's got to be like maybe him and Cam Neely, just the absolute prototypical power forward. And the hits, I know it was a different time, but the hits that these guys used to just absolutely lay on. Like when I was looking up these compilations of Wendel Clark hits and highlights, and there's one hit where he hits Bruce Bell from the St. Louis Blues, and Bell's coming around the back of the net, and when the play starts, you can't even see Clark, and by the time Bell gets around the side of the net, just absolutely steamrolls him. And what I found amazing too is nobody rushes over to fight Wendel Clark after he absolutely ends Bruce Bell. But besides the hits, like just the absolute skill this guy had. Like there's so many highlights of him completely undressing defensemen, and he's known for his heavy wrist shot and slap shot, and like this guy could absolutely play today, hands down.
I echo everything you said. Like I think the main thing that just jumped off the screen to me when I'm watching these highlights back is the complete violence almost that he played the game with, in terms of just, he had an injury-plagued career because he just laid it all on the line. He would go full out at guys a lot bigger than him. He'd fight anybody. The way he threw punches, when I use the word violence, like he was trying to punch through the back of their head, and he could throw them with some speed with both hands. Like you said, for a guy with that much skill, and I think he was 5'11", like 200 pounds, and he's going. The heavyweights back in those days those guys were huge, and he's going toe to toe with them. You see some fights where it looks like he's punching up by about 6 or 7 inches.
And that's the thing. Like a lot of times he was the smaller dude in all of these fights. And there's one clip, I think he's fighting Bob Probert, and Harry Neal saying Clark's an early fighter, like he wants to end it within the first 6-7 seconds of the fight. And then they were saying that Probert likes to hang around and then do the damage later. But if you watch any of these fights, like if you want to look up something absolutely insane, look up Clark and Rick Tocchet, or Clark and John Cordick. And there's just zero regard for your facial structure on either of those guys. Like it's just, it's just balls out. We're just going to punch each other as fast and as hard as we can. And you don't see that anymore. There's no question about that.
No, there's almost like a bit more of a boxing element to it now, where there's like a bit more technique. They're dodging punches. They're waiting patiently to take their shot. Whereas like Clark is just going toe to toe, oftentimes eating as many as he's throwing, but it didn't seem like when he took a punch that it really fazed him that much.
No, it's the amount of the Rick Tocchet one that I'm talking about. Like those guys must hit each other 45 times within a 2-minute span. It's absolute chaos.
Yeah, the other thing I noticed about kind of fighting in those days, and I saw a lot on the Wendel clips, is nowadays it's kind of assumed once the fight goes down to the ice, it's over. There's a few clips of Wendel, like basically UFC ground and pounding guys, where he's on top of him and just like, left, right, 5 or 6 shots while the guy's down on the ice. That's why I keep using the word violence. It was just a different level of animosity in those fights back then.
I can't remember which one it was. I know there's a good one with Bob Beers, and then there's a good one with Stu Grimson, where exactly what you're talking about. Like the guy is completely turtled, and he gives him 3 or 4 more shots, where you definitely don't see that today anymore. There's almost a little bit more of a respect, but maybe Clark legit hated those guys.
Yeah, they attacked it with intensity and like zero fear in any way, and like you said, to have that sort of fighting ability, intimidation factor, intensity, and then also to have the hands, the shot, even the ability to, like you said, undress guys, pretty much the total package in terms of checking all the boxes you would want.
When you were watching the stuff, did you see the clip where he just tees one up and nails Curtis Joseph right off the side of the head with that slap shot? Like, and then they show like the handshake line later on, and it looks like he's apologizing, but my God, your life would just flash in front of you there. He just dropped him.
What were your favorite moments, when you kind of, now you look back on this career, we've kind of talked in broad strokes about the types of things he brought, but, any particular moments, games, or just plays that you remember fondly?
Definitely. We talked about it a long time ago in one of our previous episodes, but that game 6 against LA, the hat trick, the ridiculous backhand goal. Like it was weird to watch a game from back then and see a player that looks like a modern player. That's definitely one of them. There's one highlight where he just absolutely destroys Ken Danico with this like toe drag through the legs and then scores a goal. And it's those are definitely two of my favorites. But the Tocchet fight is by far my favorite Clark highlight.
Yeah, those are two great ones. The other ones that jumped out at me, one was a bit of a full circle moment. It's kind of two different highlights, but thought it was kind of like interesting to see the connection. Is there's one where he just runs over Gilmore behind the net when Gilmore was playing for St. Louis. It looked like he knocked him unconscious temporarily, and then flash forward however many years later to Game 1 of that semifinals against LA when McSorley took a run at Gilmore. And then Clark comes in, and him and McSorley have a pretty good tilt.
And there's another hit where he hits Matthias Ohlund, and he must send him 10 feet. Matthias Ohlund's going back into the corner, and Clark's coming full speed down the wing. And obviously Ohlund's not a physical guy. And Clark picks him, like literally lifts him right off the ice and just sends him into the end boards. And I think it's Bob Cole, and even Bob Cole's like, oh my God, what a hit. Just a beast.
I remember as I was watching these videos kind of reminiscing, and I think the first hockey game I ever went to was 1987. It was the Leafs versus the Blues. So I think Schnepsy and Bernie Federko and the boys were in town. And I just remember being awe of like the atmosphere in Maple Leaf Gardens, and kind of looking back now is kind of like the early Clark career, and just I still remember that atmosphere, the buzz, and just the feeling inside that building. And it made me think, there's this connection to Clark's career being sort of the last great era for Maple Leaf Gardens, because we kind of shit on Scotiabank Center now in terms of like, not being the most like intense atmosphere, but prime Maple Leaf Gardens was a special place to watch a hockey game, and brings back a lot of good memories. And he retired in 2000, and I think the last game in Maple Leaf Gardens was 1999. Side trivia question: Bob Probert scored the last goal in Maple Leaf Gardens, but
That's kind of funny.
But it just kind of his retirement was almost like, the not just the end of his career, but the end of an era for the Leafs in that chapter, and the closing of Maple Leaf Gardens.
Looking back, I didn't realize that Clark had played for so many teams. Like I remember getting traded to Quebec, and I remember the Islanders trade, but I don't remember him playing with Tampa Bay at all. I remember him going to Detroit, but I don't remember any of the Tampa Bay stuff. I don't remember any of them playing for the Blackhawks. Like, do you have any memory of that?
I kind of have this vague visualization of him in a Tampa jersey, but I don't really remember any particular play. His career was so plagued with injuries that I think after that 93 series, he never really did string together a really like full healthy season where he could kind of get back to that moment. But that's probably a great little segue to talk about the trade to Quebec, because that was like a huge moment in his career. And in terms of like gut-wrenching sort of things from a fan perspective, like if you're a Leafs fan in 93, you just finished watching this team that everybody fell in love with Gilmore and Clark as your captain, scoring three goals in Game 6. And kind of doing everything for you, like just, putting it all out there for the team. And then the very next year, he gets dealt to Quebec, where with Matt Sundin being the big piece coming back. And in the big picture, that actually turned out to be a pretty good trade for the Leafs. They get their future captain the guy that would put up the most points in a Leafs jersey. But at that time, I can't imagine there was too many Leafs fans that would have been happy about that trade.
No, it's kind of, I don't remember what the buzz was, but I know so many Leaf fans that I could just picture what their reaction would have been at the time. Obviously, it did work out for the Leafs, and you get your probably career best player of all time. But that's one, I think about jerseys, and you don't see too many Quebec Clark jerseys, which I think would be a pretty good retro jersey to have.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah, because I think it was a small window before he got dealt to the Islanders there. But yeah,
it was the next year. Yeah.
Yeah. But that actually brings, when we're talking some like nice memories of Clark, he eventually got traded back to Toronto, which was quite the homecoming, and I think probably cathartic for Leafs fans to have the chance to welcome him back. And he actually scored a goal his first game back as a Leaf, Maple Leaf Gardens, against the Kings. He's had some big moments against the Kings, but that was a pretty cool moment to see. It was nice to see him get back to Toronto. You know, he bounced around a bit before he retired. I think he actually did finish a third time in Toronto for like 20 games to kind of wrap up his career. But kind of with all that said, Charlie, do you think you could make an argument that he's the most beloved Toronto Maple Leaf in the history of the franchise?
I think he's got to be, right? Because, you know, Sundin's up there, but I just think every Leaf fan loved the way that guy played, and just loved how he brought it all the time. And I would say he's the greatest Leaf of all time.
Yeah, I would too. If you're picking one guy that you want to represent the way you want your team to play,
yeah,
bring in the passion, bring in the intensity. Obviously, you know, there's a case to be made for a Matt Sundin, you know, all-time points leader. There's guys who, like Dave Keon, won 4 cups with them. Conn Smythe, you know, trophy winner. You know, Borje Salming was a fan favorite. So definitely guys you could make an argument, and maybe guys 20, 30 years older than us would have, you know, something to say about the Tim Hortons and the Frank Mahovliches of the franchise. But I think anyone 50 years or under that's a Leafs fan, I got to think Clark is their guy.
I agree.
One last personal story that I'll kind of end things off with, which I thought was kind of funny that I had totally forgotten about until we kind of went into this, is when I used to work in the grocery store back in Mildmay, when Wendel Clark was actually a spokesman for Chunky Soup, which was a big deal back in the 90s. And the Chunky Soup salesman came in the one day, and he had a Wendel Clark hockey stick that he gave to me. So it had the Chunky Soup logo. It had like a little Wendel Clark autograph on there. And so I think I was probably like 13 or 14, and I come into the dressing room for our next hockey game. I've got her all taped up. I'm showing it off to the boys. I'm joking around how I'm going to get some nice wristers with this thing. I'm really selling it, and then go out for warm-ups and take one slap shot with it, and the stick basically explodes. I should have probably kept that Chunky Soup stick as a bit of a souvenir instead of using it in a game situation.
It's funny, like when you mentioned that, I tried to look it up to see if I could find the old ads or something, but there's people actually selling them signed on eBay, the Wendel Chunky Soup. I believe it was a Bauer stick, which is kind of funny, but yeah, definitely not for game use.
Yeah, so that was another just interesting Wendel connection, but that's probably a good place to leave it off. It was a great kind of going back and revisiting all those highlights. Like we talked about, you know, a great player, and just I think he represented everything we loved about that era of hockey. So
and miss today, right? Like you miss those kind of players because there's not too many like that around anymore.
Yeah, so we're gonna keep this segment rolling. We haven't officially decided who our next player to profile will be. Maybe somebody a little bit more obscure, but we thought we'd start it off with legend Wendel Clark. Okay, let's get our report card section going for the week, Charlie.
I've been reviewing your work. Quite frankly, it stinks. These reports you handed in, it's almost as if you have no business training at all.
I got an A for the Amazon NHL broadcast. I don't know if you've watched any of the Amazon games, but I took in Leafs versus Minnesota on Monday night. And I don't know if it's better cameras or better lighting. Overall, it's just a better product than what Sportsnet puts out. And it takes a little while to get used to the broadcasters they're using, but they are a little more innovative with their camera angles and just the way they shoot the game. And I think if Amazon gets the rights, I think it would actually be a good thing for the NHL moving forward. So an A for the Amazon broadcast.
I'm going with an A+ for the Chicago Blackhawks fans who recently welcomed back Jonathan Toews for the first time since he's been with the Jets. Absolute legend there for the Blackhawks, winning those cups, being the captain. He's had a bit of a hard run, dealing with health issues and struggling to kind of find his way back into the league. So the tribute they had for him was awesome. The crowd gave him a 5-minute standing ovation, and it was just a great moment, great thing to see. And when you see these guys that mean so much to a city, yeah, it's cool to see them get those moments.
I got an F for the UFC deal in Canada. So tonight is the first UFC fight card on Paramount, and unfortunately in Canada here we're still subject to the pay-per-view laws because Rogers Sportsnet still owns the rights to the UFC in Canada. So instead of just paying a monthly subscription of about $10 in the US, they're still expecting Canadians to pay almost $90 to watch a pay-per-view. Just put it on your regular TV and people will buy the stupid Sportsnet Plus app. It's too bad, and I hope this eventually comes around where it's just a regular thing on here. But until then, I'm giving them an F.
I'm giving a D to people wearing their pajamas to movie theaters. I don't know, Charlie, if you've been to a movie in a while, but the last couple times I've gone, there's a pretty large cohort of attendees at the movie theaters that are not just wearing jogging pants. They're wearing full-out pajamas. They're bringing blankets. They're bringing their Snuggies. Like, I don't know if they're going to be showing up with their teddy bears next, but it's kind of an odd thing to me. Maybe it's these new reclining seats that simulate an at-home environment, but, look like you care a little bit more to go to the movies.
All right, I got an F for the loser point in the NHL. I know I've talked about this before, but this is getting ridiculous. If you can't win a game in regulation, overtime, or a shootout, you don't deserve a point. And now it's starting to look kind of ridiculous in the standings. For example, the Pittsburgh Penguins are currently in 6th place. The New Jersey Devils have only 3 less wins than them, and they're in 11th because Pittsburgh has 12 of these loser points. In the Western Conference, Vegas has 12 loser points and have only 1 more win than 11th place Nashville. I think we're just awarding, just surviving way too heavily. So you either got to give 3 points for a win or eliminate this stupid loser point, because it's just, I know they want parity, but this is getting out of control. So F for the loser point.
I'm going to go with an A for Mickey Redmond, longtime broadcaster for the Detroit Red Wings. First Red Wing to ever score 50 goals. Just my favorite announcer. He's like a warm blanket listening to Mickey break it down. Feels like you're having a drink with your grandpa. He's off until after the Olympic breaks with some spinal surgery. So we just wanted to say, hey, Mickey, here at the Hazy Sports Podcast, we're thinking about you. We're wishing you a speedy recovery and looking forward to seeing your return after the Olympics.
He had one of the best at the start of the season. I think it was Edmonton and Detroit, and they kept kicking Draisaitl out of the playoff or out of the face-off. And it was, I don't know if he meant to do it or if it was a hot mic, and you could hear him say, Jesus Christ, just drop the puck.
Oh yeah, that's
awesome.
A hot button. That's a hot button for Mickey. He's always ranting about that.
All right. Finally here, I got an F for getting old. I don't normally dwell on my age too much, but I had a bit of a rough week. Over the course of the last 7 days, I slipped on some ice, and you'd swear that that was going to be it for me. It took me 3 days to recover. I landed pretty hard on my ribs. But then to make matters worse, I went and got my hair cut, And the lady cutting my hair asked if I wanted to get my eyebrows trimmed because I had some unruly hairs. And then I had to renew my license, and I had to actually take a picture. I was doing it online. I had to take a picture of my license and then expand the picture so I could read the small serial number on it to input it on the website. Unfortunately, time waits for no man. So F for getting old.
Oh, I hear you, buddy. I'm constantly looking over my glasses to read everything these days. But yeah, you might have to go in for a little bit of a rub down massage to work out some kinks after that slip and fall that you had.
It was brutal. Like, I was completely winded. I came into the house and the wife was like, "Are you okay?" And I couldn't even get any words out. And then when she realized that I was okay, she said, "Well, you got to be careful. If that was your hip, you might be a goner."
Oh, shit. Well, I'm glad you're okay, buddy. And yeah, that was a good report card session. So time to wrap things up for the outro. Let's get back to that trivia question. You know, it's been a real Gordie Howe Hat Trick themed episode I talked about with Oliver Moore. We've got Wendel Clark. I think he had a couple of them. Any guesses for who's the record leader or the record holder?
So I'll throw it a guess, and if I'm off, then maybe I might need you to give me an era. But I was thinking Cam Neely.
That's a great guess. He is on the list. It's not him. You're in the right era. It's a guy we have talked about a fair bit on this podcast over the last several episodes.
I'm gonna have to go with my second intuition was Bob Probert.
No, another good guess. Yeah, it's actually a guy that one of your favorite fights of Wendel Clark.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So it's got to be Rick Tocchet, right?
It's Rick Tocchet. That's right. 18 Gordie Howe hat tricks.
18.
Yeah,
so
which
who was
is
17?
17, Brendan Shanahan.
Yeah, that's a good one too. That's
a
great question.
Yeah, I was surprised. I had to, it's not an official NHL stat, so I had to go to I did check quite a few sources just to verify this, but yeah. It's interesting looking at the list of guys that were on there, and I think Tiger Williams was up there for the Leafs. Yeah, Cam Neely was right up there. So, yeah, I thought it was a good theme trivia question for our week talking about Wendel, and we had one in the NHL this week.
The streak continues of zero correct answers.
That's right. Yeah, when you kept bringing up that Rick Tocchet fight in the Wendel Clark segment, I thought, it's gonna be there for him this time, but
damn it.
Some good guesses. No obituaries this week, no tributes. I guess that's a good thing. We don't want to hope for people to die just for podcast content. So
it was almost me after that spill.
Yeah. I don't want to be on here doing yours in a solo episode here. Charlie, you mentioned you got a Bulldogs game you're going to tomorrow. What are you most looking forward to there? Who are they playing? And any particular players you like to keep an eye on for this game?
Yeah, so we're going to see Brantford versus Barrie. It's number 1 versus, I believe, number 3 or 4 now in the OHL. Both teams just loaded with high-end talent. I'm looking forward to seeing Keyshawn Aitchison for Barrie because the kid loves to hit and he can put the puck in the net. It's going to be kind of crazy when he makes the jump to the NHL because him and Matthew Schaefer on the same team are going to be pretty fun to watch. But this Brantford team, it's got to be the most talented team I think I've ever seen. Like they just roll line after line at you. And you remember Manny Malhotra?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So his kid is the leading scorer for Brantford, and he's one of about 7 guys that seem to be able to score at will. So I'm hoping for a good game because we've gone to 3 other ones, and every time Brantford's just stomped whoever they've been playing. So I think we should get a good one tomorrow.
Nice. Well, enjoy the game. Quick, who you got for your Super Bowl prediction here?
I'm going to say everyone seems to be on the Denver side, but I don't know. I don't see it. I can't see Stidham being able to get them over the hump. So I'm going to say New England against LA. Who do you got?
That's who I had too here. I had the old rematch from the Brady Kurt Warner days. Yeah, I think Stafford's going to get the job done, and I just trust him more than Sam Darnold. But obviously, that could go either way. And yeah, I think New England's just got some good mojo going right now. Ultimately, I don't care that much. I just want to see some entertaining games and set us up for a good Super Bowl. So I think with that, we'll wrap up the episode for the week. That was great catching up with you. We may be off while you're away in Buffalo for your trip next weekend, and then we'll be back for an Olympic preview. Get ready for Milan.
Yes, sir.
Okay, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you later.